Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Good
Yeah,
morning,
good
sir.
morning to all. Good morning. So, did everybody get the lecture notes? I
Yes, sir.
converted the PPT into converted the PPT into handout form and okay. So, yesterday we were discussing about one-point method. So, how to re-ensure or how to verify. So, whether when the compaction is in process, field or not at YMC. So one verification process is one point method. Under condition, Postman and Slider, so they have replotted the dry unit weight versus the compaction energy on a semi-log plot, and they found that instead of the non-linear nature, the relationship between dry unit weight versus compaction energy is linear in nature. And suppose if you try to superimpose on this graph two different values, the density at standard Proctor compaction energy, which is designated as gamma D max S, and the density which is achieved at modified compaction, that is gamma D max. So here, in order to ensure density, it must lie between the modified Proctor. So this is one of the cross verification of the field density, whether or not we are achieving. So in the field. So these are the different factors that can influence the compaction in the field as well as in the laboratory. But this is more relevant to the field. Couple of the factors are geomaterial type, that is soil type. As we are very well known, if the given soil composes of the different percent fractions, so then the compaction energy may or may not work, or it also gives some kind of indication that we have to go for less compaction energy or more compaction energy, or the soil is compactable or not compactable. For example, if the soil is dominant with the clay fraction, then how to ensure the compaction? If the soil is dominant with the sand fraction, or if the soil is dominant the silt fraction. So how parameters are going to be different. Then moisture content. So this is one of the very important parameter. So in the absence of the added water acts as a lubricant and thereby facilitate the particles to rearrange so as to achieve the densest possible state. So this is the role of moisture content. Then the compaction method. So the kind of the compaction method, say standard or modified Proctor. So this is called as a dynamic compaction. It is not a static compaction. But the same compaction can accompany heating or the vibration or the impact. So here this compaction energy, so this is suitable in the case of a field. But in laboratory, we always use only the dynamic energy, that is standard Proctor or modified Proctor. But of course, there are static processes also, but we did not see it because standard Proctor is one of the well-established method. While in the field, so we can resort to any one of these methods. Either we can go for the static pressure or needing action or the vibration or the impact, depending upon the soil type or the geomaterial type. Then compactor effort also includes applied energy, compactor size, lift thickness, and number of passes. So in fact, I have given a small introduction about these factors. Uh, as an example, suppose if you take the standard Proctor compaction, we know we are applying 25 number of blows for each layer, but total in 3 number of layers. So if this is the total amount of energy applied in the laboratory, then how do you corroborate this with the field energy? Because in the field we are going to use the rollers. Then the roller size may differ, or the amount of energy that it is applying is also might. So this is about the mission, the impact of the mission or the influence of the mission. Then another important factor is the soil and the thickness of the soil layer. You also again need to optimize how many number of passes, because if the lift thickness is too much, then the bottom soil might not be compacted properly. If the lift thickness is too small, then there may be some over compaction, or you are wasting the energy. So there should be an optimum lift thickness and optimal number of passes. If the number of passes are too less, then the soil is under compacted. If the number of passes too high, then you are wasting the energy. Then another important factor is relative layer stiffness. So that is what is the composition of the upper layer or the lower layers. So this important slide you can able to understand how to fix the lift thickness and how to fix the number of passes. So the lift thickness can be determined based on influence depth of a roller on a specific fill. Now again, though I show here, but this kind of graphs can be developed corresponding to each variety of a roller. So as is shown in the previous slide, these similar graphs can be developed for static energy, vibration energy, impact energy, as well as the needing action. So you need to have your own the depth, lift thickness or the depth versus the density compaction curves. So here a graph has been shown, so which is the relationship between the relative density that we are achieving over a depth. Now, when I say depth might include a single lift or multiple lifts. So in the figure A, it is a single lift, while in the it is corresponding to 3 number of lifts, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we can able to determine the relative density versus the depth. Now for a large lift thickness, relative density increases with depth and then decreases after reaching the maximum value. So this is the field observation. Usually the relative density corresponding to one lift is not constant at all. So initially the density increases and then decreases. So the peak is the optimum. the peak is the optimum. So the peak related to the optimum depth. Suppose if you suppose many number of lifts, then there is a peak and there is a minimum or the average. In fact, it is a minimum. So if you look at carefully here, so this is the peak value. So this is the peak value, and this is the minimum relative density that is achieved corresponding to different. So, but the target relative density is different. The target relative density is different. So, as we have seen yesterday, percent or 80%. Suppose if the minimum density found to be is higher than our target value, so that is quite good. So that is quite good. So this kind of a graphs helps to fix the lift thickness as well as to ensure the number of passes or to determine the number of passes. So people did on this kind of approach how to determine the lift thickness and how to determine the maximum relative density that is going to be achieved in the field. So as per D'Apollonia, the overlapping point between the two. So this is overlapping point. Okay. So in order to find out the best and optimum relative density, so it is advised to superimpose multiple number of lifts so as to determine the minimum relative density. So as for these graphs, easy to understand that you need to ensure the overall what is the minimum relative density that you are achieving in the field. Now, another important thing is how to ensure whether you are achieving the performance or not. So when you talk about the compaction, so property of a soil. So when you do the compaction, its shear strength increases. When shear strength increases, the bearing capacity increases. When you do the compaction, it also modifies the permeability. When you do the compaction, it also increases the settlement, or it also increases or decreases the shrinkage. Now, if you look at carefully the graph, so this is a compaction curve basically. So this is a compaction. On this compaction curve, different portions have been hatched, indicating different effect of compaction on the different engineering property. So, for example, so this is the compaction curve. Here you can see. Suppose if you select this region or this pocket, that means or your target is achieving the maximum shear strength to the soil. Shear strength to the soil. Okay. Suppose your target is a permeability. Your target is not a shear strength. You want to constrain flow of water within the soil mass. Then ideally you should locate or you should select the gamma D and OMC on wet side, not on the dry side. So if your target is the shear strength, target on the optimum or the dry of optimum. But if your target is the permeability, so you should select the gamma D and OMC on the wet of optimum side. Suppose if your target is all properties, then this is the overall. So this is the overall. But of course, it's possible to attain that desired target value of density or the OMC. So therefore, what we do is adjust the OMC and gamma D max values relatively. So the same thing has been listed in this table. Suppose if you look at carefully table 3.1. So for different applications, what should be the range of a dry density and what should be the range of a moisture content can be easily understood. For example, when you are dealing with the roads up to a depth of 0 to 0.5 meter and depth of 0.5 meter. So your the target relative density is 90 to 105%. And your moisture content can vary. And if it is a small earth dam, then again the range, the density range is 90 to 95%, the relative compaction, and the OMC variation is -1 to +3. Similarly, for large dams, embankment, foundation for structures, wall, trench, clay liners, so on and so forth. Okay, and here also one thing you can understand. For example, if you compare the application of the clay liner with the application of the road, in case of the road, the strength is the pivotal, while in case of the clay liner, permeability is the key. By no means we should allow the movement of leachate from the clay liner. So therefore, in this case, the density could be less, but it should be on the optimum moisture content because the permeability should be as least as possible. Okay. So this kind of a compaction curves, in fact, when you become an geotechnical engineer, you should prepare this kind of a compaction curve indicating which portion is useful for what purpose, or which portion of the compaction curve is improving property of the soil mass. So the relative compaction can be determined based on the specific application. So as I told, so is your target is a strength, or is your target is a permeability, is your target is a volume change, or is your target is overall. That means you are looking as well as the permeability as well as the compaction, so on and so forth. So when a project has more than one performance requirement, the acceptable zone of compaction should be determined. So this is called as an acceptable zone. A lot of work has been done on deciding the acceptable zone. So the criteria is different for different applications again. Try to understand. The criterion of deciding the acceptable zone is different for different applications. For roads, the acceptable zone is different. For earthen dams, it is different. For large dams, it is different. For clay liners, because even if you look at all the applications, although we have a primary engineering property and the secondary engineering property, but you need to maintain satisfy both the properties. For example, if you take the roads, so it is not only the strength requirement, but it is also our duty to ensure that the permeability is at least. So suppose if you take the roads, the primary concern may be the strength, but the permeability can become the secondary. Similarly, the consolidation of the second settlement. So you need to have the list of priorities of the properties. Then accordingly, then you have to prepare acceptable zone. So it is acceptable zone. So a zone which satisfies all the requirements should be selected as shown here. That is called as a overall. So a couple of the observations are like, for example, Houseman suggested that as a rough guide, the maximum dry unit weights of the sand and the clay determined by standard Proctor test 90 respectively.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir, the values of dry density which are given in this chart, like depth 90 to 105%. Sir, these are with respect to the
no, in the field.
like the maximum density which we obtain in the field, it should be 90% of that.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Now, another important point is how do you select the most desirable the compaction for example, want to compact with one kind of the roller, but its availability is a big question. Everywhere, availability of a desired equipment is a big task. So if the desired equipment is, then what is the alternative? Okay. So let us try to first initially understand, say equipment is available. Then how to select that particular equipment? So there are different compaction equipment that can produce for different action on the field. So smooth drum rollers. So this applies uniform pressure. So this is very well known. C-foot roller applies some kind of a kneading action. So where the load applied is at concentrated pockets. The pneumatic rubber tire roller applies pressure and kneading action. Then vibratory roller applies vibration energy, and granular fills high friction and therefore more effectively densifies by the vibration. Cohesive fills cohesion and capillary force between particles. So these forces will be broken by high pressure. Therefore, rollers with high contact pressure are suitable. So for cohesive soil, you should select rollers with surface area or high contact area. In fact, you also again, if the clay content is very high, it should be with some kind of a C-foot roller. Now here for different geomaterial type, so the first choice, the second choice, and what is the some merits and demerits have been listed here. So in case if you are dealing with the rock fill, where it is neither cohesive soil nor cohesionless soil, so but the particle sizes are bigger than 4.75 millimeter. So which is the size of the gravel, or in fact rock fill means in size of the boulders. Then you should always prefer to choose a vibratory kind of a roller. And if that kind of roller is not available, then you can go for the rubber tire roller. But as you know, in case of the rock fills, so the edges are very sharp. The edges are very sharp. So in case if you are going for the rubber tire roller, there is a possibility of the function, and thereby the performance might not be up to the mark. So you observation whether does it fits the purpose or not. Then plastic soil, for example, highly compressible clay, compressible pad foot roller, and the second choice would be a rubber tile roller. So the comment is, in case of when you are dealing with the plastic soils, so it is always able to go for small lip thicknesses. So you should not go for more large lip thicknesses. Then low plasticity soils like CLML, again C-foot roller or pad foot roller. You can go for rubber tire vibratory roller. In the earlier case, it is only the rubber tire roller, but in case of the low plastic soils, you can also apply some kind of the vibration. So see, so here plastic sands doesn't mean those are really plastic sands. It indicates that it is a gravel or sandy type of the soil, but those soils also comprise a amount of the clays or it is only clays or silts. So here when you are going, first choice could be vibratory or pneumatic rollers, and second choice should be pad foot roller. So however, the selection may depend on the relative proportion between the clay content and the gravel content. If the clay content is minimal, then we can go for the vibratory or pneumatic roller. But if you found that the clay or the silt fraction is reasonably dominant, then we can also roller. Silty sands and the gravel, vibratory roller, rubber tire, pad foot roller. Clean sands, all vibration. And as a second choice, you can prefer impact or rubber tire roller. Clean gravels, vibratory roller is most preferential. Or as a second choice, you can go for rubber tire, impact, grid roller. In fact, the grid and impact kind of rollers can also be suitable for rock fills. So then regarding the 1-point method, so Ohio Department of in the Ohio, they have also came up with some kind of analytical way of determining moisture content. So this is also nothing but 1-point method. So this is also 1-point method. But in this, you need to first have a bunch of the compaction curves, as shown. So in this picture, so it is called as a Ohio compaction curves. So what developed by the Johnson and Seilberg. Now, whatever the gamma d you are determining in the field, the same gamma d value must be superimposed on this set of compaction curves. And whatever the compaction curve it is falling, so that typically represents the soil type of the soil type that you are borrowed from the field. So that's what this 1-point method. And here the US Navy design manual so also gives how to determine the W opt and gamma. So you can also use this kind of equations, which again try to relate with the liquid limit and plasticity index. But basically, so these kind of graphs were developed for transport for roads, especially for development of the transportation infrastructure. So alternatively, this is called as a 1-point method. The 1-point method can be used to estimate W opt and gamma d max in a design chart. So this is called as a design chart. So gamma d. So you can use this equation to determine if maximum and what should be the value of the W opt. Or if you know W opt and what should be the gamma d max. In the field, we see, suppose, if you look at carefully the standard Proctor and modified Proctor test, if you look at all the codes, most of the codes recommend when you compare standard Proctor or modified Proctor test, the particle side, the particle fraction should constrain to 2 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 425 microns. But what if the particle sizes are exceeding 4.75 or even 90 millimeter? Now, so these are called as a fills. So when fill contains oversized particles, here oversized means the particle size of greater than 4.75 millimeter. That too when you are taking 100 millimeter diameter mold, or 19 millimeter when you are taking 150 millimeter diameter mold. So in this case, the kind of correction has to be W opt, as you can see here. So this is the equation. So using this equation, you can and correct a W opt value. So the gamma nothing but gamma W OS. So that is percent of oversized particles by weight. The gravity of oversized particles. Density of the water. So then W opt corrected is nothing but W opt into 1 minus POS plus WSSD. WSSD is saturated surface dry moisture content of oversized particles. So multiplied by the OS, the percentage of oversized fraction. But this is valid only when you are going for the oversized particles, where the particle size is above 4.75 millimeter or above 19 millimeter. Now it is also important to know that if your particles are greater than 4.75 millimeter, you must select a compaction mold of greater than 100 millimeter. Or if your particle size is exceeding 19 millimeter, then you use 50 millimeter diameter. So this is some information to are how to decide the lift thickness and the number of passes. So this is most important. So this is some kind of the guidelines, and again you can also refer to any of the IS course which also talk about what should be the minimum thickness of the lift and how many number of are required for a particular soil type, and based on the center. For example, if you take a seafood roller and you are dealing with fine grain fills or coarse grain fills with more than 20% of fines, you must go for lift thickness of minimum lift thickness of 1 millimeter, and the number of passes are 4 to 6 for fine grain fills, and rubber type roller. So if the rubber type roller is used for clean coarse grain fills with, now you must remember everywhere. So in the field, usually we always try to determine what should be the fines content in a given soil. Usually in all ground improvement techniques, we always bother about how much is the fines content. If the fines content is too much, maybe if they are exceeding 10 to 20%, they predominantly influence the overall performance of a ground improvement. As is shown in this slide, how they are going to affect the performance of an equipment. Thus, in a similar way, if the percent fraction of the fine particles are excessive, then they are going to influence the overall performance of improvement. So it is therefore it is important to what should be are important to report what is the percentage fraction of the fine particles. Here fines means the particle sizes of greater than 7. Okay. So for clean coarse grain fills with 4 to 8% fines, then we can go for 250, and the number of passes required are 3 to 5. So on an average, if you look at for any kind of the equipment and for any kind of the soil, the lift thickness ranges between 150 to 300 millimeter. 150 to 300 millimeter. You need to optimize by making some kind of a trails in the field. The minimum that you can go for is 150 millimeter. Maximum that you can go for is 300 millimeter, but it should not exceed 300. It should not be lower than the 150. And regarding this also, if you look at carefully, the number of passes required always lie between 3 to 6. So the minimum number of passes and the maximum number of passes are 6 for majority of the soils. However, so depending upon the percentage fines and the soil composition is the number of passes, because when you increase the number of passes, there was no loss at all. So even if some pockets of the soils are not compacted, so they can be compacted when you increase the number of passes. But if the number of passes are too much, then it is some kind of the waste of energy. It won't suffice any purpose in improving the density. Now, if you look at carefully this slide, a lot of things you can able to understand. The first of all, what kind of the equipment that you should select for what kind of the soil, and what should be the role of a percentage fines in an overall sample. What should be the minimum and maximum thickness of a lift, and what are the minimum and maximum number of passes that shall be applied. Can be observed that, so if the percentage fraction of fine particles are higher, the number of passes increase. While in case of the coarse grained soils, relatively less number of passes are required. So these are the few observations that one can able to notice from this slide. Now, another important thing is that, so we collect the soil sample from the field when you do any standard or modified Proctor compaction test in the field. But in the laboratory. But in the field, how do you do it? In the field, what you do? We select a barrow area. From there, the soil is transported to the site and it is compacted over there. So when it is compacted, the density of the barrow area is different than the density of the soil which is recompacted, say in the road or in the earthen. So there are two things here. Next is the road application or the embankment application. Now, barrow area means there the soil compacted. In the barrow area, the soil is naturally compacted. So when a soil is naturally compacted, it was compacted over hundreds and millions of years. So therefore, the density is always higher than the density of the field. The barrow area density is always higher than the gamma D max. Gamma D max that normally we determine by the standard Proctor compaction test. But the same barrow soil is loosened, that is excavated using the equipment and is transported with the help of the lorry or truck to the site, and it is compacted using the seaport roller or smooth wheel roller, whatever it is. But the biggest question is, can I able to achieve the same density that is equivalent to the density of the barrow soil? There are two things: density of the barrow soil and density of the same soil compacted on the road or on the embankment. So while it is practically impossible to achieve the same density of the barrow, in the case, then how much volume of the soil shall be transported so that the road can be constructed for 1 kilometer or up to the desired depth? Or we should determine what should be the volume of the soil that should be excavated from the barrow area. So for this, you need to determine two things. First of all, you need to determine what is the density of the barrow area soil. The second thing is, what is the target density that you are going to fix it? Target density that you are going to fix it. So based on these two things, so you can able to determine how much volume of the soil shall be excavated from the barrow area. So here we can see VB represents barrow volume. That means how much volume of the soil to be excavated from the barrow area. VFR, V means volume, required fill volume. So this we can able to determine because we know, therefore based on the calculation, based on the simple geometry, we know how much is the area, cross sectional area multiplied with the length, the fill volume. The gamma fill dry unit weight of the fill and gamma B the unit weight of the barrel. B remained core cutter method or sand replacement, and that is nothing but dry weight loss in stripping, waste, oversize, and transport. So when you are excavating the soil mass and in the process of the transportation from the barrow area to the site, anything can happen. And there are other things, because since we don't know particles are size particles, so according for all these things, how much volume of the soil to be excavated in the area. Now, as a rough estimation, instead of volume of the film. So usually if your fill volume is 1, then so this is what is the main 1.1 to 1.1 and Prague it is 0.7 to.
Sir.
So these are the small factors that one can.
Sir, you are not audible.
So that's all.
Hello.
Okay, just wait a minute.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you are not audible. This borrow volume
Okay.
one, you are not audible.
Okay. So I will repeat. So you have a site, you have a barrow area. The soil is excavated at the barrow site and transported to the site, and then it is compacted with the help of the rollers. Now the big question is how much volume of the soil to be excavated from the barrow area. So a rough estimate is approximately, so either you can use equation 3.7 at the conversion factor. For soil, we can use a factor of 1.1 to 1.15. That means, suppose you need to excavate 1.1 to 1.15 times of V at the barrow area. Now the additional 10% or 15% might be attributed to the stripping or the loss of the soil during the transportation, so on and so forth. So all losses will be covered in 10 to 15%. But often it may be even less than 1 also. For soil, it may be even less than 1 also. It is always greater than 1. And while for rock, it is less than 1, that is 0.7 to 0.9 times. Full compaction. So this is slightly deviated from whatever the compaction that you dealt in your compaction test. Basically, so here we basically dealt about how to determine the lift thickness, how to determine the number of passes, and how to determine the density in the field and optimum moisture content in the field. Of course, we did not discuss about the gamma D max, the gamma D field and determination. But now you have a fair idea how to select an equipment appropriately for a given soil type and what should be the and how to decide the number of passes for a given soil. So this is quite clear to you all. Now of late people are developing a variety of equipments, so which are in fact more interactive type. Interactive means its limitation with the current static or is we are simply deciding the length of, say for example, you compact road length of 1 kilometer and a so you are uniformly applying the compact without bothering about whether it is also one more limitation remaining the gamma D field. When you conduct one sample for length of 500 length of, we do not know whether the soil has been compacted or not. Suppose if you take an interval of 2 core cutter samples 100 to 1 kilometer, we were literally not knowing what is the density achieved in between. In between can overcome when you go for some kind of intelligent compaction. Here intelligent compaction means, see for example this. So this is the roller. So the rollers are equipped with some kind of the systems so that they will let us know for each and every meter depth, or for each and every 10, what is the amount of energy applied or the response of the compacted soil to the sensor. Strips with different colors. So the colors indicates density, that is H compaction. If it is a uniform color, it indicates that uniformly compacted. If the colors are different, then it indicates that there is a non-uniformity in the. This non-uniformity, then one can able to find out whether the soil is loosely compacted or densely compacted. Suppose we found that the soil is loosely compacted, then only that particular location can be recompacted until we are achieving the desired density. So that is a intelligent compaction. Or alternatively, it can be automized. Automized means without manual intervention. So the instrument can vary the different parameters. For example, we can optimize the vibration amplitude, the frequency, and the speed. Also, of late, so all the compaction equipments are equipped with the different sensing systems, uniformly compacted. The road is uniformly compacted. So there is one more negative point to this one also. The negative, we are obtaining the soil sample from the barrow area. So it is not guaranteed that the volume of the soil your barrow area is again uniform. It's always possible that the barrow area soil is also non-uniform. In fact, this is what really happens. The barrow soil is not always uniform. If that is not uniform, then achieving the uniform gamma D and uniform is practically impossible. In those circumstances, it is important to go for the intelligent compaction, where the instrument senses whether the soil is loosely compacted or densely compacted. If it is loosely compacted, then again it reads or the speed. So this is what is the advantage of intelligent. Quality control means whether the gamma D is achieved throughout the length of the stretch and is uniform throughout the stretch of the road. So this technique includes automatic measurement of properties through pre-installed sensors, and often so the equipment is also housed with the GPS system, that is global positioning system. So they give the latitude and the longitudes, and based on the color contrast, we can identify is poorly compacted, and we can identify the location, and there we can recompact the soil sample until the density is the desired density is achieved. So there are several variety of intelligent compaction rollers are available. So many countries are developing, like Amanan case, so Bomac, Caterpillar, Dynapac, Sakai, manufacturing different variety of the intelligent compaction equipment which are embedded with different sensing systems. So try to remember the type of the equipment is remains same, but each equipment equipped with different sensing systems for achieving the uniform gamma D and uniform.
Sir,
So this is very similar to compaction. Yeah.
sir, your voice is breaking a lot. We are unable to
Hello?
understand what you are saying.
Okay. What shall I do? Okay, let me wait for a minute. Okay, so the suitability of the intelligent compaction is almost very similar to the conventional compaction. Only thing is that the same equipment is housed with different sensing systems. So intelligent compaction rollers can be used to compact natural subgrade and fill, so ranging from cohesive to cohesionless materials. The application is very similar. So there are some advantages and there are some limitations when you go for intelligent. These are it is easy to identify weak spots, so based on the sensors, so which is possible in case of the conventional compaction. Treatment of the weak spots, identify the weak spot and treat it. So it is always possible to have a monitoring of the quality control and quality assurance. And we can also avoid, suppose if some pockets of the soils are over compacted, then we can decrease the passes in those locations and we can reduce the overall number of passes. And however, the limitation is equipment is more expensive and requires managing and analyzing a significant amount of data. So as we are getting the data, we need to have a constant monitoring on the data. So not say that I will monitor, I will from morning to evening and tomorrow I will take a decision. This is practically not possible. So as and when you as try to identify spots and again compact then and there only. So often requires test for calibration of the target compaction values prior to production compaction. But of course, kind of calibration is also required in case of the conventional compaction. So probably when you go for intelligent compaction. So there are several varieties of parameters. So the typical parameters are intelligent compaction measurement values. So these are the 5 variety of parameters that are normally used to measure whether desired density is achieved or not. But try to remember, so when you use intelligent compaction, only the amplitude and frequency that you are going to change. So therefore, all parameters are directly or indirectly amplitude of the device. Amplitude of the device. Now the commonly used intelligent compaction measuring values are compaction power, compaction control value, stiffness, and vibration modules. So these are the different parameters measurement by core cutter method or sand replacement method. So when you go for the intelligent compaction, you do not need to practice again core cutter method or sand replacement method. So those things can be replaced with the compaction meter value or mission drive powder or compact control value, stiffness, vibration modules. So I will talk about all these parameters maybe in Friday's class. So maybe on Friday's class, I will stop it here. If you want, you can ask a couple of questions. You are most welcome. Questions, please.